around and see some good topics. We've had a lot of people carve out time for you, and also want to thank you for carving time out to be with us to hear what we have to talk about. So today, George was kind enough to agree to have us use this space, which is a wonderful area to be in, to give a presentation, and also for us to chat a little bit about setting expectations and some of the things that we do. And hopefully you're able to take a couple minutes with you when setting expectations for homeowners and things that we run into. Some good tools that are out there as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit more on the front end of what it's like setting the expectations when you first meet a prospective client, and really getting their head around what remodeling is like, whether they've done it before and used someone else, whether they've done it before and used you because things have changed, or whether they've never remodeled before and this is their first venture going into this area world of altering their home. So if that sounds like something you want to hear about, stick around. Otherwise, you know where the exits are, the restrooms are, the snacks are, and all that good stuff. And Russell is not to go with anybody. Unless it's okay with you.
Yeah,
All right. So we're going to do that. I'm going to advance here. And homeowners, when they call you, they have their own set of expectations. So if you think about it, we have a phone that rings. Anybody knocking on doors, doing cold call marketing and sales by nobody? Yeah, that's died a long time ago. We don't even need to do that right now. But we have the internet, we have ways that people can find out about us to determine whether or not they want to call us. So that first vehicle that people look at is generally what you've marketed yourself to be. So your website, ads that you place, whatever it might be, it starts to set the expectations that the consumer has. They also watch TV, right? They watch HGTV and they see shows like While You're Out, and they realize that remodeling happens literally just while they're out and come back and it's done, so it only takes a couple hours or days. And they might look at that timeline and say, yeah, that probably goes pretty quick. They look at the price, and some people have an idea, other people do not have any idea, but we can find out that they really do have an idea through a few questions, which I'll chat about in a moment. And then there's the complexity of it. We talked about this morning in the complexity of projects where people will call you and tell you how simple it is. You get those calls, they want to tell you, this is simple, so it shouldn't be that difficult or it shouldn't take that long. They're always wrong, aren't they? It's just taking out a wall. Well, then when you say, well, you're going to have to redo your floors. Well, I don't need to redo my floors, I just want a new wall. So, or I want the wall. Well, alters the floor. There's Paul. That's okay, he can go around. He needs the exercise. So, so you have the complexity. They have it in their head what their expectations are. Quality. Everybody wants quality here, don't they? Nobody wants quality to be compromised. Nobody wants it to be cheap. But when you start talking to them about the level of quality, they say, "Well, I'm not high end." But the reality is, most people really are high end when you start sorting out what people are looking for. And then, of course, communication. Everybody has their own expectations in communication, and that, quite frankly, is where projects are won and lost, is in communication. Because communication is handled a lot of different ways now, isn't it? Before, we had to do one of two things. We had to pick up the phone and call, or we had to schedule a meeting to do whites the eyes. Today, there's texting, there's emailing, there's social media, there's still phone, and my favorite, meeting people, whites the eyes, in person, to chat with them. There's letters that you can send. There are all different ways that people have of communicating that really can make it more complicated for us, because not everybody's the same. There's not a silver bullet for communication that says this is the best way to do it, because everybody interprets information differently. Sometimes there are software systems used for communication that companies rely very heavily on, and they wonder how could the project have possibly gone wrong. Well, that's because the client's expectation of communication is different than using a tool in that manner. So it's important to understand those expectations that they have, but also help set clear, realistic ones for a project. So let's jump into it and see how we do that. So we talked about marketing. Marketing might be the first way to reach them. So there's always been this argument of marketing rhetoric versus reality. So what do you actually say about, what does the company say about itself? Through your marketing, through your website, that's how you're telling the public in general who you are first and foremost. Through your advertising, whatever it might be. And then what do you say about your company? So when you have your people out there meeting them, are they saying the same thing that your marketing says? And then lastly, in production, you actually do what you say you're going to do. Okay, they're saying one thing and doing another thing that can derail. So a client says, you said that this would happen, you said this would happen, you said you clean the job site every day, you said I could eat off the floors. Never forget, I had a project manager who literally said that to a homeowner. We keep it so clean you can eat off the floors at night. Well, nobody knows you're not going to eat off your floors. You're not going to ever set yourself up to do that in the first place. But we had a little bit of dust, just like every project has. And this client said, I can't eat off of these floors. They're filthy. They're a mess. I would never eat off my floor. And he said, don't set us up for failure. We did a really good job of keeping the site clean, but the expectation was so high, it was unachievable. So don't say what you do with your company that isn't achievable, because you'll set yourself up for failure. So be very clear, understand what your company's message is, understand what message you have to send to people, and of course, in production, you have to be able to deliver what you're saying. Doesn't mean it's gonna go perfect. Construction is one of those things where it's 1,000 things trying to go wrong, we're just trying to limit the number of things going wrong all the time. And that's part of the expectation you should set. Some things will go wrong. We'll get to that in a moment. So here is setting expectations. Some of the things to take a look at. What is your modeling like? I said this earlier today. You're not marriage counselors. All right, there are many times where homeowners, very early on, you can see where they're either not on the same page, or the wife wants new appliances, and the husband's like, there's nothing wrong with these, they're just fine. Well, guess what? You're getting new appliances, sir, because you're not going to win that argument. You're not going to be the marriage counselor, but get a gauge on how well a couple communicates. If one of them is making decisions that's never present, you got a problem. It's going to be a problem for you. Their issues, their personal issues are theirs, but they become yours if you don't rein that in. So the expectations to set are, we're going to need everybody around the table at some point. There are going to be some conversations that need to be had to set those expectations. What does day-to-day activity look like? George, you tell me, are your guys on every job every single day? No. And homeowners think that we will be because they watch enough television to believe that that's how construction goes. So we have to let them know, hey, we're going to be working on this project methodically. Every day, your project is on our radar, and we're making progress to it. So even when nobody is in your home, that's a day of progress. So we've worked toward that end date that we've targeted. Focus on the end date, that's your eye on the prize. The day-to-day activity, there are things like inspections. When you have inspections, you gotta sit with your tool belt down and wait for someone to come in and inspect your work, sign off on it, so you can move to the next stage to get it inspected. And that takes time. It's slow going. Trade availability. That's a fun one right now, isn't it? Everybody's spread thin. You've got to book people way in advance if you really want them to be there at any reasonable time. You can't just pick up the phone and call your plumber and say, hey, I need you there tomorrow, because guess what? You're not going to be there. And so it's okay to tell homeowners that trades are pressed right now. We're going to be managing this thing and scheduling things out, but if there's an issue that may require someone to shift, we might lose a week. It happens. But when it happens, I'll tell you. And that's the best thing I can do, is be transparent with you. It's okay to tell people how this is going to go. Don't feel like everything has to go perfect, because it's just going to, it won't. It's construction. Remind them, this is construction. Your home will be a construction site. If your choice is to live there during construction, and most people are working from home, I should say, more people are working from home than they ever have before, that means they're going to be subjected to the noise, demolition, everything going on a construction site. So you've got to prepare them. If they've got young children or newborns or whatever, maybe they have nap schedules, they have pets in their home, you've got to talk about what that method of caring for the pets are. So you can say, this isn't new to us. It's not our first dog in a house, it's not our first cat, it's not our first fish tank, but here's what we need to do to make sure that the dust doesn't get in your saltwater tank and kill your fish. I can tell you, I dislike probably saltwater tanks more than anything, because of the danger there is for dust getting into those gosh darn things. So you got to talk about that as your plan. And then there's product lead times as well. Gosh darn, what we're running into right now with the demand on products, the things that have happened. And yesterday, I don't think any of you in this room were there, but we had some of the folks that deal with appliances and home building products talking about the strain on the material availability, the cost of them, the lead times that continue to get pushed out. Part of the reasoning is, this isn't a knock on any socioeconomic group, but there's a lot of blue collar folks that work in the manufacturing facilities that have the luxury right now of deciding whether or not they go to work because of COVID. because I had a fever, or someone in my family had a fever, so I don't have to go to work today, but I do get paid. And there's a lot of that behavior going on right now that is really putting a chokehold on the manufacturers to be able to get the product made for all of us. The raw materials might be there, but the ability to manufacture them, and assemble them, and have them ready for our demand, it's not there right now. So the lead times on cabinetry, usually going to be in the 6 to 10 week period, still doing a nice job there in most cases. But appliances, it went from 2 weeks to 4 weeks to 12 weeks to now they're saying it could even go up to 8 months. Just heard that yesterday. That's scary. So some of the fabricators making some of the parts have gone out of business that are critical to making appliances. So there's some concern out there. This isn't just to get you all worried, but having that conversation with a homeowner doesn't leave you on an island when something goes sideways. It allows them to understand that, hey, we're in this together, because you're in it together with them. When you sign an agreement to build a project, you're with them until the very end. So that communication, expectation setting up front is good. When the decisions need to be made, the impact your dragging feet. You ever have those clients? You don't. I've had a couple clients that take their time making decisions. Those indecisive people that say, yeah, that's the same false about. And then they call you the next day and they're like, no, I don't want that. I want it different. And you say, well, we've got to make a decision, or we're going to be, this thing, the lead time on these things is going to really impair our ability to be on time. But they don't remember that as much as they do what they want. So you got to set those expectations, set some deadlines, and I think most of you in this room probably have good systems in place to help manage that to the best of your ability, to make sure product is there, and the manufacturers, of course, have to deliver on their end. And then the change order process. Change orders aren't bad, but be clear as to why there are changes. You ever get the question from people that say, do you charge for change orders? Anybody ever ask me that? Haven't happened, yeah. New homeowners have a tendency to do that. You get so many change orders before they start charging for change orders. And I've had that question come up where they say, do you charge for change orders? I say, I don't. Let's talk about what you think might change that you're going to control up front. Because when you change something midstream, it has a ripple effect on your project. Clients will remember the date you tell them you're going to finish the project. Whether they add scope to it or not, they're going to remember that date. They're going to forget that you told them, I got to add 3 weeks to do this. A lot of times, so you got to remind them. You got to have a sign off on it. You got to say, hey, look, if you add changes, there's very likely going to be a change to your construction timeline. Typically longer. So just be aware of that. And depending on how late in the game it is, if you say, you know what, let's do all the windows in the house. Well, windows are a 13-week lead time right now. That might change in a few weeks to be even longer. So if you know that, you got 13 weeks, you're adding on to a project. Try to squeeze those in. If it's past when you had trim scheduled, now you got your trim guys coming back and messing around with all of that. So it really can disrupt the process. And it's okay to have these conversations with the homeowners and let them know, this is why we got to think it through. We don't want these things to happen. Nobody wants them to happen. So let's talk all those things through. Those when in Rome moments where clients are like, while you're in the house, why don't you just do this? It happens a lot. Those can be inconvenient to us. Okay, other things. Talking about price, right? I love this tool. How many of you know cost versus value? So costversusvalue.com, do you use it? Do you refer to it? You guys use it, refer to it? Awesome tool. Because it gets you off the hook when someone says, how much do you think this is going to cost? I hate that question. I despise that question. I don't know. What countertop did you pick? What light fixtures did you pick? What faucet? What cabinets? What are the cabinets doing? What's the flooring doing? I don't know enough about the structure to know what we have to do to it to get this project done. So that's just a problem waiting to happen when you're left in a position where you're going to throw a ballpark number out. So I love using this tool and saying, well, let me show you some of the projects and here's how it works. Use cost versus value. You can go through it. Everyone always says, that's what I love. It says major kitchen remodel, mid-range, and then there's major kitchen remodel, upscale. And everyone goes, well, I'm mid-range. I go, oh, okay. Do you want solid surface countertops? Of course. Well, you're already on mid-range. You're at upscale. And as soon as you read that little paragraph to them, they go, oh, crud, I'm upscale. Yes, you are. Because they want the number to work oftentimes when they try to classify themselves as mid-range. So set the expectations. I tell them how this report, how the numbers are arrived at. Be very clear to them about where these numbers come from and that they are true averages in our market for these types of projects. And if you're all looking at it, you're probably going, yeah, that's pretty realistic. Pretty close to an average. Remember, averages come from highs and lows. So could you do it for less? Probably, but it depends what that project is. Could be more too. So costversusvalue.com is where this website is. Homeowner can go on and download the PDF. I usually like on a telephone before I go out and run an appointment and say, take a look at cost versus value. I don't want this to break their heart, not me. So if the numbers are way off. So I like that. I don't like to walk in completely blind. I like to say, take a look at it, snoop around on it, see what it says, read some of the paragraphs. I'll give you a good handle of what to expect from an investment standpoint. Because it's not all about numbers, there's a lot more that goes into it like this. Time management. You know what clients say, I can't see this bathroom taking more than 2 weeks. You get that one? You know where people try to tell you it should only take 2 to 3 weeks, and I don't understand what the world would take 8 weeks in a bathroom. What are you guys doing here? So, helping people understand when there are inspections, when there's tile, when there's templating of stone, it takes 3 weeks turnaround time, and then a shower glass is going in, and there's a 3-week turnaround time from template of the glass. There's downtime. You're already 6 weeks and just waiting for those 2 products right there that you usually don't template the exact same time, depending on the project itself. So when you're looking at that full scope and range, it's okay to help educate people. You don't have to prove them wrong. You're there just to educate, set their expectations realistically. Let me tell you why a bathroom takes 12 weeks. I walk you through what happens. And you walk them through it and they go, okay, or you can show them a timeline that says, here's what is involved in your project and here's why it would take this long. And they go, okay, I guess that makes sense. That just seems like a long time. Say, yeah, it does. It's realistic. So you got your timelines, and then this, I know George, these guys are going to go into it here in a little bit. The emotional roller coaster, I love sharing this with homeowners. I got some good stories with it too. Because this says what the emotional roller coaster really is, what people go through. And so when people give me an indication that they need to understand their emotional journey, I show them this tool. Because they're always high at the beginning of design, and then you know when you tell them how much this thing is going to cost, and they go, look, and their spirit drops a little bit. And so when they get their working drawings, they're excited because they are visualizing this wonderful change in their home. And then their emotion drops because they've signed a contract, right? And I even tell people this, not all of them, but with the client that I feel it's relevant to, I'll say it's normal for you to feel like you didn't make the right decision. It's normal to be nervous about this decision because you haven't lived in the kitchen yet. People go through this a lot, but you're making the right decision. So hang in there, it's gonna be good. And that helps people understand that it's okay for them to go home and say, are we really doing the right thing? We just stroked a check for $35,000 to these people, and are they going to go fishing in Mexico with that money? Or are they going to actually order anything with it? There's some trepidation that folks have that's not abnormal. So let them know it's okay when they make that size of investment. Also let them know you appreciate it. So when you get through construction, when you start construction, demolition is always exciting, right? Because they walk in and they see that immediate change. They go, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And what happens? It's like the brakes hit. It's not exciting when a wire is run through a wall, but it's progress, isn't it? So their emotion starts to dip a little bit because they're going, how long is this thing going to take? I mean, there was a plumber here today, and all he did was put a plumber thing right there. I don't understand why they couldn't have been doing this. People start rationalizing. If you didn't set good expectations, they start thinking about how you should be doing your job. So you get down to drywall, which is just wonderful, and you start hanging it. It takes on a new view right away, and they get a little hope. They're like, oh my gosh, cool, the room looks different. And then you sing of it, and you really tick them off because everything in the house gets covered in dust, and that's where they're at an all-time low. And they're going, when are they going to get the heck out of the house? They've been here forever, and now they've covered everything with dust and rats. And so then you got your trim, your tile, painting, your point, all the pretty stuff starts coming in. So your designers that have selected all this wonderful material, you start to see it on the outside of the drywall, covering the wires, covering the plumbing. But to a plumber says, I don't want you to cover that, it's so beautiful. Right? They love their stuff, and they should. It's the plumber you want. And so you get up there when it's finished, and you're at party time, and everybody's happy. That's what should happen. If if you set good expectations, that's not abnormal. There's nothing wrong with that. You did your job, but the fact is you know it, so you can prepare for it, you can remind them, here comes dust. So maybe you can take this bit and put it up a little bit higher. They don't hit such a low, and then they're really happy with you, and that's where your referrals and all that stuff come in. So, communication clarity, jumping into that. Establish options for handling the communication. Just ask them, how do you like to communicate? What's the best way for me to reach you? Or what's the best way that you prefer to reach me? Just get it out of the way. Have them tell you, and then you know what, you gotta do that. Because if you want it to be successful, you can tell them, here's what works for me. If you're gonna try to reach me, I tell people, if you're gonna email me, I'm probably not gonna see it right away. So if there's an urgent issue, or you're trying to get my attention, shoot me a text or call me. You'll reach me. So even if I'm in a meeting and I get a text, I can look down and maybe send something back while no one's watching me and get a text back up to them. But if it's an email, I'm not checking that until I get back to my desk. So it won't happen as often. But if they say the only way I'm going to communicate is email because I want a written record of everything we talk about, then you got to kind of figure that out. Maybe figure out with that client how to carve out a few minutes in the day to check your email a little bit more to see if there is anything, or get alerts on your phone so it tells you when you have an email from that individual. You just have to kind of work around that. Clarify who they will have as their points of contact throughout the life of the project. Just like most projects, the first person that goes out and meets the homeowner is usually not the same one who's building this stuff. So you've got to tell them, you're going to have me for a while, it's going to get handed off to this person, and then this person becomes your point person for this portion of the project, and I'll always be here for you, if that's the case. If it's not, you just say, I'm here through this window of time, but then I'm going to hand it to these guys because they're going to know everything going on, and that's who you should be talking to. Set those expectations, whatever they are, and how you handle it. Because they're building a rapport with you. If you're the first one in the house, they're building that rapport with you. That's where the trust is coming from. And so they have a bond with you that they're going to hold you accountable to the very end. So if you set those expectations and say, here's how it's going to happen, just help them through that journey. Some people need their hands held. Set rules for handling crucial conversations. Okay, I want to tell you this, with communication is so gosh darn important. And I have this conversation with every single client. I tell them something will go wrong. Don't know what it is. I don't know when it will happen. I really don't know how big of a deal it will be. I will be there for you through that process. I don't want you to get upset with me. It's okay to be frustrated, but when it happens, I want two things in all of our communication at any point, in every conversation we have. I want complete honesty, but you need to be respectful of it. Because if you think about communication, if those two ingredients are not present, communication fails. So you can be dishonest and respectful, right? You can say something that isn't very honest or not clear or not enough information and be respectful, and then the point doesn't get across. Or you can be really honest and disrespectful. Tell people how you feel about it, right? But it's disrespectful, so communication's done. It's not going to go anywhere. So it's really important that those two pieces are present in every form of communication that you have, so you're successful. So at the end of it, you go, okay, we were successful in our communication, and you have a client that respects you and is able to work with you. Have you ever had a client yell at you? Anybody have that? Am I the only one? No. Yeah, it's good. I mean, yeah, I think.
Taking me out of the way of clients, that's why it's been a while.
That's possible too.
Yeah.
But this is an emotional process for homeowners. This is their home. I mean, this is their asset. They have family, pets, all those things we talked about. If they ever feel like those things are violated, they feel violated. And you're the one that's going to be held accountable for it. Have you ever had that client who comes home at the end of their day and they had a horrible day at work? And somehow that's your fault. Because not enough wires got run, or trim didn't get run today. I don't know why you didn't run trim. You the guy standing around twiddling your thumbs doing nothing. Well, just understand that sometimes when you're working with homeowners, they're going to have other triggers that affect that. But if you go back to honesty and respect, I've had it with a couple of clients saying, hey, look, I get you had a bad day, I get this is frustrating, but we can't have honesty or respect absence from our conversation, or we need to schedule another time to have it. I've only had that conversation a few times with homeowners, but it's an important one because they remember it. Because I had that expectations set previously. And they go, okay, I'm sorry. They usually apologize and say that's fine. And it is fine. Right? Life's hard. So let's see, what else? Look for red flags. I think I'm about done here. I'm going to hand it over to you in a second, but always set your company and team up for success. I talked about this earlier today when selling a luxury, but this is really important. I said that Dave Fox, when I worked at Dave Fox, I had the luxury of working with Dave Fox years and years and years ago when I was there. And he said, Bryce, sometimes the best deal you make is the one you walk away from. We just left an appointment, and we didn't sign a contract, and I'm thinking sales-wise at that time, we want to sell everything, don't we? And he said, sometimes the best deal you make is the one you walk away from. He said there are too many red flags. They thought they knew our business better than we did. They were telling us that we should be done at this time. They said, you can't be here during these hours. I'm not giving you a key or access to the house. There are all these things that he said, it's setting us up to fail. And I don't want to set the team up to fail. Have you ever been so mad at a salesperson in production, you're like, why did they bring us this client? We should have never done that. That's when this happens, right? When your team's bringing the wrong people in the front door. So don't set your team up for failure. So does your prospect appreciate what they're telling you or what you're telling them? Or do they do one of these things? Do they dismiss your reality and tell you their expectations as the reality for what the product should be? I've had that happen, and it's not fun. Are they distracted while you're educating them? So while you're going through this presentation or you're meeting them, talking about the project, they're on their phone, or they're like, I gotta get this call, and they walk away and they come back, and then they just start talking about something that had nothing to do with the conversation you just left. That's a red flag. Okay, that person's a little scattered, maybe not the right fit, maybe it's the right fit for you, but it's certainly not for me. I'm not like trying to chase people's attention. Do you simplify, or do they simplify their project? We talked about that earlier. It's just a law, it's simple, what could possibly go wrong? Do they share a budget with no supportive reasoning? You know, when you say, have you thought about what you're comfortable investing in this kitchen remodel? And they go, $30,000. You know, where in the world did you get that number? That's just what we have available. And that might be the case. Well, it's not enough. That doesn't mean that's all you have, and that's what it will take. These projects cost a certain amount to do the way that people want them to be done, and it's just the reality of it. So setting those expectations are important to do that. And then lastly, do they have a deadline for the project? That one drives me crazy. When they say, my son's graduation is May 20th, and we're having a big party that weekend, so I'm really going to need you to have this project wrapped up by then. Boy, do I hate when people give us a deadline when it's that tight. Now, if they said graduation 2022, I would say, I think we might be able to get that done by then. But when their timeline is really tight, or you start getting into June and July, and you've got a homeowner who says it's got to be done for Thanksgiving, or we're having all of our guests here for Christmas, that is a red flag. You know, with lead times for product, that means they have to make decisions efficiently. There's so many opportunities for things to go wrong. That doesn't mean you should run for the hills, but you should have a very clear conversation of realistic expectations. Now, what does finish mean to you? That you can use the space, but maybe we still have backsplash to put in. Understand that if it's a project you really want, don't kill it necessarily, but don't be held hostage to a date that someone throws at you. It will set you up for failure. So I know George has some stuff here. I believe right here, I just flipped the slide. I'm done with my part, so I'm going to take your chair. If you want.
Or maybe we can hang out here and stand there.
Whatever. Yeah. I'll just say what you said.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want.
I can click.
You can find beer in the house too, Bryce. You look for it. But yeah, so again, I appreciate everybody coming today. I thought one thing that we could do is we do have a little addition to Bryce's PowerPoint, so we'll kind of go through some slides. But this is John Coleman. He's a project developer here. John used to be a project manager here, so he was in the field for a tool belt, and then when we had an opening for a sales position, he asked if he could change gears and we could come up into the office and try things a little differently. He's done an excellent job for us. So, but I thought what we could do is, just kind of a little impromptu discussion, talk about some of the situations that we've all been into, and try and make it a little bit collaborative about what, Bryce and I and John don't know everything in the world. We never will. I won't live long enough for that. But, if there's situations that you have questions about, don't hesitate to stop and ask. If you have a situation that you think something that you've lived through with a client that's really relevant, that might help any of us in the room, because let's face it, we're in the room as well. We would just ask to moderate, but it doesn't mean that we don't come to work and learn every day. So, since it was a little quick and, sorry, it's Paul.
Yes, sir.
Yep. So how about everybody just kind of tell us quickly what your name and what you do, what your position is in the company?
Yes, my name is Paul Cleary, and I am a partner with Bryce's in his new endeavor.
Okay.
Happy to be here.
Great.
Sorry, I'm Jenna. I'm with Stellar Construction. I do sales.
Great.
I'm Jill Zinn, the founder of Bryce Designs. Design studio here in Columbus.
Great.
Pam Haggard, Executive Director, Mary of Central Ohio. Woo.
April?
April now, and I work here at the Cleary company, and I'm the marketing coordinator.
I'm Margo Sheen, I work here at Cleary as well, as client relations, a new position that just started in December.
I'm Andy Hurrico, owner of Finish Line Builder.
I'm Tommy Young, estimator at Finch.
Great. Well, I think what John does, and I am Russell's boss. Everybody else's boss. So we'll kind of dive into what we had. We just kind of put together some things, and again, I always like a little bit of dialogue, so if anybody has a question or concern about something, we can go completely off topic as far as we're concerned. What is our timeline to stop?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock, perfect. Sounds good. So again, this was the slide that April had picked out for us to just kind of show, you know, everything that we do has to be collaborative. You know, we try and set, again, the topic here today is client expectations, as Bryce has already chatted about. But, you know, it's a little bit of a team approach. So we like to tell people, just like what Bryce was saying, you know, I may have sold a job, John may have sold a job, but we're going to hand the baton to somebody in the production department. We're going to hand the design baton to a designer. We're going to hand the production to the production people. So we make that really clear that you're not going to be dealing with John every hour of every day. Again, to reiterate Bryce's point, we're not going to be at your project every day. We want people to know that up front, because if they're assuming that, they're sitting there waiting, it's 9:30 and we haven't seen anybody, you know, by 10:30 they're calling the office. So we definitely want to make sure that we have good expectations with the client going on. Savings of time and energy by having the collaborative, this is actually a design build, why we do design build, a clip from our design build presentation. Why we do design build? Because the left hand knows what the right hand is talking about. We don't have to go to a separate architectural firm and say, well, how did you design this and why? What did you tell them about budget? We just go down the hallway and do that. So again, the collaboration is really nice to have the communication from the design, the budgeting, the permitting, the production, the warranty is all within one organization. It makes it a lot easier to continue that expectation for the client. The planning, the design, all of that stuff, and then going over the detailed scope of work, which we kind of cut and pasted a few slides in here just to kind of show you some examples of what we do as we progress through the discussions with our clients. And then also we can kind of guarantee them what it's going to cost. But we're owning the whole project, and we know a little bit more about what it's going to cost from start to finish. Anything that rings a bell, or questions, thoughts, anybody? John, you want to come
All right, so yeah, we kind of have our version of the same goals. But anyway, you know, as kind of everything Bryce said, you know, if you hit all the things that he mentioned, working with that prospect, you know, up until the point that they become a client, you have set yourself up for success. It does not hurt, you know, to come out and then, you know, reiterate some of those things, because they hear things in the beginning, and we're kind of, you know, what Bryce presented, what we're taking it as is now you know, they are the clients now. So, you know, all the things, as you said, the salesperson has said, you know, is the production department are we going to be consistent through the process? And, you know, if we went there and told them you could eat off the floor and then show them this when we were coming out to their house to start the job, then they're going to go, well, you know, that's not what I heard at all. And that's a big reason, you know, the person at the beginning has to stay involved in the whole project. You know, people do go through this, and you're living in their house with them, and sometimes for very extended periods of time. Again, as a former project manager, somebody's living here for 6 months, you know, while they were not having a good time. And it's not good for anybody, but, you know, you try and set what the expectation is, and trying to make sure that they're hearing what you're saying is very, very important. It just, you know, an example is telling somebody you shouldn't go through this remodel, and they say, no, we'll be fine. And, no, it's not fine, you know, at a certain point. But, you know, if you have a guide, or, you know, just a way to kind of, you know, set that up, we use this all the time, clients love it. We do this when we're a week out, basically, or 2 weeks, depending on the size of the project, from starting their project. They've gone through our design process, they're our client once they've done that. We're taking them from the design to contract, and this is something we use, you know, right before we're starting their project. Like, we're out there at their house, they're meeting their project manager, and we're showing them this to say, this is what it's gonna look like. This is not going to be fun. If anybody told you it was, they have never done this before. So, yeah, this is just, as you know, Bryce said, this is a great tool. We've used it very successfully, and it really does set people up for, you know, that low point. And it's 100% correct. It's always drywall sanding that they just can't take it. You know, the dust that gets through it, no matter what you do. And I'm sure everybody here in this room has spent countless hours trying everything, every stack of tape that big in plastic, covering every, you know, thing like that. But it does get better, as long as people are, you know, aware of that they're gonna have that low point, question everything, and the money they spent. Then, you know, again, you set them up even from the beginning, from before they're applying to now we're reiterating it a week or 2 weeks before we're starting the project. So they're hearing that clear, consistent message, and that's gonna help, you know, with the success of the project.
A couple things I'd like to add in too, John, is we actually post this on our job site, so the clients are constantly seeing this. If we're redoing their kitchen, we're taking a blank wall, and we're actually thumbtacking it or taping it up to the wall so that they have a constant reminder of it. Because we do not want them to remember that, you know, building's gonna be this amount, and it's gonna be this, you know, we want them to see this emotional chart. This is something that when we added the emojis to it years ago, I'd show them all kinds of documents when I'm selling a job. This would stop them like a freight train. They'd laugh and love this, and it was a distraction. So people really do resonate to this because it's something that they can go back to. But also, if you beat them like a dead horse about the drywall sanding and the hassle and the inconvenience, it's rarely, if ever, nearly as bad as what they had in their head. So if you over-exaggerate sometimes, and let's face it, everybody's different. Some people are just easy to live with, some people are not. So when you're trying to remodel their home, if you told them it's going to be miserable, and it's just kind of bad for a few days, and other than that, it was just an inconvenience, they're going to be thrilled with it. You're going to get a better review. So anyway, enough of that guy. Communication, again, just kind of a slide we pulled from a presentation that we did, but this is imperative. You know, we all, I'm not necessarily going to look at what we had said. Some of it is similar to what Bryce had gone over. You know, how do we communicate? How often are we going to communicate? You know, something that I always like to ask people is, if something were to go wrong, if I was going to hit a hot button at some point in this project, what would it be? You know, well, if my baby gets awakened from her nap at 10 o'clock every day, that's going to really frustrate me. Well, that's great. I'd like to know that today before my guys show up, because your baby's going to get woken up. You know, it's inevitable. So I always like to ask that extra question. You know, what would be a downfall for you? If I get a flat tire because of your dumpster out in my driveway, when that happens, I'll pay the bill. You know, just get it out of the open as early on as you can. And many other things that you could go into about communication, but you know, as Bryce had alluded to, honesty and respect, keeping it on the up front, don't hide from difficult conversations. It's just going to do nothing but balloon and beat you in the head later.
So again, timeline, setting expectations. Another thing that's talked about is, you know, if you have software that you're not communicating on a daily basis. I mean, we do use, and we'll show a slide of that, we do use a project management software. But we're always trying to set the expectation of the client that, look at this, but if this doesn't happen on the exact day that it says, it's gonna be somewhere in there at this point. You know, we're doing our best, but things change in the field. Set that expectation, let them know that they can look at their schedule for their project, but it isn't going to be down to the minute every day. Whoa, there's a couple days here where it looks like nothing's happening. You know, well, you know, as you said, there's things for inspections, or we need a day or two of, you know, some work's being done behind the scenes so that, you know, they know, and again, it's just that expectation. If you're communicating with them the way they want to be communicated to, with your weekly meetings, or, you know, a group text between basically everybody involved in the project, they're not gonna have to rely on something maybe less tangible than a schedule that they were given, printed out, or a schedule that they were, you know, given as part of an act flow. You know, you may hear clients, some clients love it, and, oh yeah, I look at that all the time, and then there's other clients like, have you ever looked at that? No, I haven't. But you guys were great because we had that weekly meeting set up, so I knew what to expect on a weekly basis, you know, from you guys. And again, it's, you know, again, taking it from now we're in production, a big part of that is the project manager. You know, being that main point of communication, and, you know, letting them know, not every day, but, you know, here's what's coming up for the next week, here's where we're at, and, oh, but I looked at the schedule and it said we're supposed to be at this point. Well, I update that schedule about every 2 weeks. You know, the start date or the finish date, you know, we're still gonna be there, just certain things may speed up, or certain things may slow down. And family schedule, as it says in this, that's, again, it's the first part of what we do, is sit down and how are we gonna interact with your family through this construction? What concerns, you were to say, what concerns do you have? Pets, kids coming and going, what do we need to be aware of? You know, you're not gonna be successful unless you're listening to their wants, but setting the expectation of what is actually possible at the same time.
So on the pet thing, has anybody ever lost a pet out of a client's house?
Yeah, we had a cat pass away one time.
During the project?
Basement flooded. It wasn't anything we did, it just happened to happen during the
It wasn't clear.
And it was not clear, this is a long time ago.
I walk around neighborhoods chasing cats with cans of tuna fish in my hand, trying to get cats to come back before the client gets home. Because the client insisted that they would not leave the house, and I'm like, well, we can't bring in drywall without opening the door. So if the cat leaves, what do? It won't. Calvin and Hobbes, both. She had no children, she was divorced, those cats were her children, so I was walking around the neighborhood like a crazy person.
Last time I ran a full sprint of a solid shoe model was because a small dog slipped out of the door as we were carrying materials, and it was a woman who had no kids, she had that dog. And I thought I was going to have a heart attack while I was trying to run that thing. Also, now we're clear.
We had a dog run through a paint pan and drop paw prints through the house, but fortunately we had paper down. And we ended up taking a section of the paper and framing it with the paw prints on it. And the paw prints, the worst thing you can ever do. So we kind of made, lemonade out of lemons there, because we were like, oh no, get the dog, it's gonna run across the floors. And, it was a fun day.
So, this is, times have changed. I've been doing this a long time. 20 years ago, this is not what we were showing clients. So again, just with expectations, people, for the most part, they want to know what it looks like these days. We're able to, this is just an image taken out of some of the programming that we use. it does take away, I think, a lot of anxiety for people that had a hard time with visuals before. You have to really trust that your designer really knew what this was gonna look like, and it was gonna be great. You know, now we just use this as, like, this is the actual faucet that you're going to have. That is the actual hood that is going to be in there. And so I think that puts a lot of people at ease. It also helps them, you know, see what, you know, the pain they're gonna go through to get there, both financially and living through it. You know, this is essentially what it will look like. And I built a couple projects when we were first starting to use some of this stuff, and it amazed me. I was finishing a job and holding up the rendering next to the finished product, and it was like, oh, that's it. So,
Just like HGTV,
what's that?
just like HGTV.
I don't watch any of that stuff. This old house is the only one I can watch today.
Lions do.
But you do have to watch these things because, as we all know, projects evolve and change. And, you know, for example, maybe this was 2 doors up here at the top, just like it is now, but at the end, it might be a wine rack or something, so you have to reiterate to people, you know, maybe that's a bad example, but if they see something at the end product and look at their drawing, and like, well, this isn't, you know, what I originally discussed, well, likely they're gonna remember, well, it's because I'm a wine, I want wine. But sometimes these drawings can give you a little headache.
Yeah, we try to set the expectation that this is conceptual in nature, this is not what we're going to use to build off of. For that reason, you know, as you said.
So again, just a copy of the drawing, we don't need to look at too much of the minutia of it, but, you know, it's something, we have visual representation so that they understand, here's what we're gonna get into. This is, maybe this dotted line on this drawing is where the wall's being removed, and this is what's gonna be installed. So at least they have some kind of reference of, wow, now I understand why you wanna come in through the garage, because otherwise you're gonna be coming right through my front door every day, and that's a really nice foyer that I don't wanna disrupt while you're doing your work. So, again, just kind of having some communication about, here's what we're gonna do, here's where the refrigerator is, you know, make sure you're comfortable with that. It's 10 feet away from the stove, and you're comfortable, just kind of going through all those details, because we'd rather iron all that out in the design, surely, than when the production people are done and it's set, the cabinets are installed. It's a difficult time to talk about relocating the refrigerator. Another slide on a project that, you know, where we go over the details. We have them sign off on some of their selections, or on all of their selections, just to keep from, wait a minute, I wanted this door down to be oil or bronze. No, look here, you sign your initials, but it's going to be bronze. So, you know, there's different ways that we can communicate what we're doing and make sure that they understand so that there's no confusion. And let's face it, you know, a lot of people at the end of it's the middle of a project. They may have got a finish line and Cleary company and JS Brown. And they remember telling somebody that we want stained interiors of the cabinets. They may have told somebody from JS Brown, they didn't tell that to you. Now you're in contract and they swear it's you. You know, so it's not all the time that the buyers are liars. Sometimes they know that they told somebody, they assume it's you. It's not that they're a bad person, and now they're disappointed. So again, just the notion of this over-communicate is always better than to assume. Assume will just come back and kick us all in the can. So again, the contract, this is just a snippet of a contract of ours that this kind of talks about the detailing language. And our project developers really go through this kind of on a line-by-line basis to understand, here's how the payments are gonna be made, here's what we're doing. This is the color we're not doing. Yeah, and that's a great point. I used to always like to say as part of my presentation, this is a document that's gonna get us familiar with what we're doing, and equally as important, what we're not doing. If we are not doing yard repair because your husband agreed that he wanted to save $850, we're gonna put a not included section in there. If your brother is doing the finished painting of a wine cabinet, then we're gonna exclude that, we're gonna put that all in there, just again, be very specific to what it is that you're engaging with, because moods change, as we saw in that emotional chart. God forbid, but we've all been guilty of it. Sometimes we drop the ball, whether it's a vendor or something happens, and maybe it's a tragedy in the family that we're dealing with. They become difficult people that are never going to be pleased. And now all of a sudden, we still got 3 months in their house. So we want to have everything documented to the best of our ability and assume that they're not going to be as lovable as they are the first time you shake their hand. So you wanna have all this stuff documented. You wanna talk about this?
Yeah, sure, and then, you know, so we met with the actual client, they become our client, we've gotten them through their whole project, of course, it's gone amazing, because they always do. At the end of everything, you know, there's other ways to kind of, you know, you're closing up a project. If you set the correct expectations, if you performed as you said you were going to, for the most part, most people are fairly reasonably, if you vetted your clients well, then this is kind of the end goal. This is a sample of it's called build quality, and it's kind of like a third-party reviewer that we use. They send surveys out to clients after we've completed it, so that they're not, you know, sitting with us asking the questions. You know, people are more likely to be honest when it's a third-party reviewer. So this is for one from one of our back-to-back projects, and it looks like it went really well, which is probably why we chose this one.
It was just the last one.
Sure was. They generally, yeah, they knock it out of the park. So the, you know, so the client has, you know, they're able to feel like they got everything off their chest, you know, good or bad at the end of it. And it's kind of the way to just close it out, and, you know, hopefully from this, we're getting the number one thing, like they're likely to recommend, right? So that's the goal of all this, is that we all continue to stay in business, continue to get referrals, because referrals are the best, you know, clients, the best leads we want to run with. Because somebody had a great experience, then they're going to tell everybody, shout from the hilltops. And we've been very blessed to have quite a few clients who are like that. I mean, they go to a party, they go work the room just to tell them how great their modeling experience was. We do not pay these people that way. It's just, you know, they just had that good of a time, kind of working with us. So, and, you know, that's the goal there. At the end of the day, we want to build beautiful projects where we want to have, you know, happy clients that are going to be repeat clients, and their friends and family are going to be repeat clients. And so if we end up with some bad scores here, it also gives us a chance to kind of inwardly reflect, okay, where did we go wrong? Was there a trade partner that we have an issue that we, you know, we have to look at and say, okay, you know, is there something, is this a sit-down conversation, or is this a, we're not using them anymore type of situation? I mean, we would know that usually beforehand, but, you know, even if it's minor things here or there, it just gives us a chance to improve our system, you know, based off the client's feedback.
So my comment on this is with the client expectations is, you know, maybe if you've got somebody that you're not sure, somebody was in here, maybe they're still in the building, was introduced to a client just before this started, and Robert had said they're seasoned remodelers. To me, I love that. They've already been through the ropes. You know, if it's somebody that's never done any remodeling and they're asking every question, we might pull them through broken glass, and I hate the experience. You know, so if you have somebody that you're afraid that doesn't have much experience in remodeling, how good or bad or indifferent it could be, maybe pull out some testimonials and talk to them. And if you peruse our website, sure, we didn't build this company based on bad experiences, but we have had bad experiences. We want our clients to know that. We're not gonna hide it to show all the 5-star ratings, because we want people to realize that sometimes even we drop the ball. And to your point, we drop the ball on every job. I can assure you, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, we are gonna drop the ball at least once or several times during the project. When it happens, we're at your side. We're not gonna run from it. Open communication will add to the success. But if you don't have somebody that's seasoned, you may want to show them a referral or two, and even some of the bad ones, and say, but at the end of the day, they were likely to recommend us 5 out of 5 times. They got through it, you know. This is something that April had been part of a session yesterday with the Mary group, and just talking about some of the lead times. And I've been doing this for 38 years or more, and we're in a crazier time than I've ever experienced from as far as product availability. And I'm a cyclist. I always like to refer to bicycling, because in the bicycle stores last year you couldn't find a damn bike. Everybody and their brother wanted a bicycle. Well, the production couldn't keep up. Well, if you figure a bicycle might have 100 parts, no different than a refrigerator, or a stove, or a microwave, or a bathtub. A let's take back to the bicycle, there's 100 parts to it. They can't sell a bicycle if it doesn't have inner tubes to fulfill the air and the tires. They're waiting on inner tubes, they can't sell you a bike. If they are missing the spokes for the wheels, they can't complete the package, they can't deliver your bike. So all these manufacturers are having problems with metals and supplies and the parts and the pieces to build the appliances, to build the resins to be able to manufacture the vinyl windows that they're all buying. Yeah, all those things are in such demand that 85% of the product may be there, maybe in a shipping container sitting off the coast of LA that they just can't bring in yet because of regulations. So I think communicating this and even having something in your contracts to protect you, when costs go over, you know, what are we gonna do, Mr. and Mrs. Smith? I can't control the lumber price. My price is based on a $25,000 lumber package. If it becomes a $35,000 lumber package, I can't take that hit. You know, so you might wanna add some clause into your contract for this tumultuous time that we're in to kind of protect you.
Kind of the same stuff that we were talking about, you know, raw material shortages, the logistics, the inventory, high demand, not being able to get it into the United States for different reasons. Staffing, Bryce had referred to, trying to play catch up, you know, everything that, creates havoc for us.
So that's really our part. 3 minutes late, sorry, Pam.
So good.
I said that was 3 minutes over.
But again, if anybody has any questions, they want to shut down the door immediately. Any thoughts, comments, or?
Will anybody do anything different for setting expectations? Do you find it effective? We all need those things.
It's working out.